Imagine this. You're sitting on your couch after a long day, you unlock your phone, telling yourself you'll scroll for just a minute. The first post is an old classmate announcing a promotion. The next is a friend holding the keys to a brand new house. Then comes the engagement photos, the dream vacation, the perfect family picture, someone celebrating a fitness transformation, another person starting a business. Within 60 seconds, something strange happens. Nothing in your life has actually changed. Your paycheck is the same. Your family is still there. Your dreams are still alive. But somehow, your joy has quietly disappeared. Why? How can someone else's success make your own life suddenly feel smaller? That's one of the strangest traps the human mind falls into. And if you don't understand it, you can spend your entire life chasing someone else's story instead of living the one God uniquely wrote for you. The strange thing is that comparison doesn't begin with social media. Social media only amplifies something that has always existed. Deep inside, every human being asks the same silent question: how am I doing? That question isn't wrong. It's completely natural. The problem is how our brain tries to answer it. Instead of looking at our own growth, our own progress, or our own purpose, it almost always looks sideways. It looks at someone else's life. Psychologists call this social comparison theory. Your brain constantly measures itself against the people around you to figure out where you belong. Thousands of years before psychology gave it a name, the Bible was already showing us how dangerous comparison could become. Think about Peter. After everything he had experienced with Jesus, after walking on water, after witnessing miracles, after being restored from his greatest failure, Peter still looked at another disciple and asked Jesus, "What about him? Isn't that amazing?" Even someone who walked beside Jesus struggled with comparison. And Jesus answered with incredible wisdom, "What is that to you? You follow me." 4 simple words. But they completely changed the conversation. Jesus wasn't being harsh. He was reminding Peter that comparison always distracts us from our own calling. The moment Peter stopped looking at Jesus and started looking at someone else, he lost focus. The same thing happens to us every day. Here's what most people never realize. You're not comparing your real life to someone else's real life. You're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. You know your mistakes. They show their achievements. You remember every failure you've ever had. They upload their biggest victories. You know the nights you cried yourself to sleep. They post the smiling vacation picture. You know your doubts, your fears, your financial struggles, your unanswered prayers. They share the one perfect moment out of thousands of ordinary ones. That's not comparison. That's an illusion. Yet our brains treat it like reality. And here's something even stranger. Even if you became the person you're comparing yourself to today, you probably wouldn't stay satisfied for very long. Why? Because comparison has no finish line. The person making $50,000 compares themselves to someone making $100,000. The person making $100,000 compares themselves to the millionaire. The millionaire compares himself to the billionaire. The billionaire compares influence. The influencer compares followers. The athlete compares championships. The artist compares talent. The student compares grades. Comparison never tells you you've arrived. It simply moves the goalposts farther away. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much success you pour into it, it never feels full. This is exactly why comparison steals joy. Joy isn't taken because someone else succeeds. Joy disappears because comparison quietly changes your focus. Instead of appreciating what God has already placed in your hands, your attention shifts toward everything He has given someone else. Gratitude begins shrinking while envy quietly grows. And envy rarely announces itself. It doesn't usually say, "I wish they would fail." Instead, it whispers, "Why isn't my life like theirs?" It sounds harmless, But that question slowly poisons contentment. Have you ever noticed how children behave before they learn comparison? Give two small children identical toys, and they're perfectly happy. But the moment one child notices the other toy looks slightly bigger or newer, their own toy suddenly seems less exciting. The toy didn't change, their perspective did. Adults often do exactly the same thing. We compare careers, relationships, homes, salaries, appearances, ministries, followers, vacations, even our spiritual lives. We begin measuring blessings instead of receiving them. The Bible tells the story of the parable of the talents. 3 servants received different amounts. One received 5, another received 2, another received 1. What's interesting is that God never asked the servant with 2 talents why he didn't have 5. He never asked the servant with 5 why he didn't have 10. Each person was evaluated based on what had been entrusted to them. God doesn't compare your calling to someone else's. He asks what you're doing with the life He has given you. That's incredibly freeing. The pressure to become someone else disappears the moment you realize God never asked you to live another person's story. Think about nature for a moment. No 2 fingerprints are identical. No 2 snowflakes are identical. Every sunrise is slightly different. Every flower blooms at its own pace. God seems to enjoy creating uniqueness. So why would He suddenly want human lives to all look the same? Maybe your timeline isn't wrong. Maybe it's simply different. Maybe the promotion hasn't come because your season is different. Maybe you're not behind. Maybe you're being prepared. Joseph spent years in prison before he entered the palace. David spent years as a shepherd before becoming king. Moses spent decades in the wilderness before leading a nation. None of them were late. God was writing a different timeline. Here's a challenge that might change your life. Tomorrow morning, before opening social media, ask yourself one question. Am I trying to become the person God created me to be, or the person the internet keeps showing me? That's a difficult question, but it's an honest one. Because every minute you spend chasing someone else's life is a minute you're not building your own. Imagine how different life would feel if you stopped measuring your progress against everyone else. Imagine celebrating someone else's blessing without believing it takes away from yours. Imagine waking up grateful instead of competitive. Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing a person who doesn't need to win someone else's race because they're finally running the one God designed specifically for them. The truth is, comparison isn't really about other people. It's about forgetting who you are. When you know your identity is rooted in God's love rather than in your performance, comparison begins losing its power. You no longer need to prove your worth because your worth was never earned in the first place. It was given to you. So the next time your phone convinces you that everyone else is ahead, remember this: you're seeing a snapshot, not the whole story. And while you're busy wishing for someone else's chapter, God is still writing yours. Don't rush the pages. Don't skip the process. Don't trade your unique calling for someone else's highlight reel. If this message spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear from you. What is one area where you find yourself comparing your life the most? Your answer might encourage someone else who's fighting the exact same battle. And if you want more videos that connect everyday psychology with timeless biblical wisdom, consider subscribing. Until next time, remember this simple truth: God never called you to become someone else. He called you to faithfully become the person He created you to be.